There are no resistant people, only inflexible communicators. I know that sounds bold, maybe even unfair. But if you lead, coach, sell, or simply try to influence anyone, this one truth can change everything. Because let's be honest, we've all had those moments. You're trying to help someone see things differently, but they shut down. You offer a solution, they argue. You show the logic, they still say no. It's easy to label them as difficult or not ready, but here's the uncomfortable truth. When communication stalls, it's rarely about resistance. It's usually about rapport. Every person filters the world through their own values, beliefs, and experiences. So when your message doesn't land, it's not rejection, it's a signal. You haven't met them where they are. And that matters because the cost of missing rapport is huge. Teams tune out, clients pull back, relationships strain. We lose influence, not because we're wrong, but because we're speaking a language they can't hear. But when you understand this presupposition, when you see resistance as feedback, not defiance, everything shifts. You stop trying to convince and start connecting. You listen deeper. You adjust your tone, your pace, your words until they feel seen. That's rapport. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. And once you find that rhythm, communication stops being a battle and starts becoming effortless. I'll never forget one of my early coaching sessions with the client. Let's call him Mark. Mark was the kind of person who lived in spreadsheets, brilliant mind. Everything he said came with data, structure, and bullet points. But he came to me stuck, exhausted, burned out, and completely disconnected from his team. So I did what I thought any good coach should do. I went straight for the heart. I asked about purpose, meaning, fulfillment. And within 2 minutes, I lost him. His eyes drifted to the clock, body leaned back. I could almost feel the invisible wall go up between us. And the more I tried to break through, the stronger that wall became. Every question met with logic, every reflection deflected. For a moment, I actually caught myself thinking, he's resistant. But then I remembered this presupposition. There are no resistant people, only inflexible communicators. So I took a breath. I matched his tone. I shifted from emotion to structure, from why to how. Okay, I said, let's build a framework for your stress. That's when it happened. His shoulders relaxed, his words flowed, the wall dropped. Because I stopped speaking my language and started speaking his. At that moment, I didn't just get his attention, I got his trust. That's rapport. It's not about making people like you, it's about helping them feel understood. And once that happens, resistance turns into connection and change finally becomes possible. Here's the first lesson, what resistance really means. Here's what that moment with Mark taught me. What we often label as resistance isn't defiance, it's a disconnection. In NLP, we say resistance is feedback. It's the mind's way of saying, I don't feel safe yet. You're not speaking my language. Think about that. And neuroscience backs this up. When someone feels misunderstood, their amygdala, the brain's alarm system, activates. The body shifts into protection mode, not learning anymore. Cortisol rises. The prefrontal cortex, where logic and empathy live, goes offline. In other words, they literally can't hear you the same way. That's why resistance isn't the problem. It's the signal pointing to the real problem, a lack of rapport. Most of us, especially leaders and coaches, take resistance personally. When someone pushes back, we double down. We talk faster, explain harder, try to convince them. But that's exactly when they pull away. Because the moment you try to force change, you stop facilitating it. Mark wasn't stubborn. He wasn't unwilling. He just didn't trust the process. And trust doesn't come from telling people what they should do. It comes from showing that you understand how they see the world. That's the essence of rapport. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. And here's the fascinating part. When alignment happens, the mirror neuron system activates. It's that moment when the person across you feels, you get me. Once that happens, their nervous system relaxes, heart rate slow, empathy increases, their guard drops. Real communication can begin. The myth is that resistance means failure and it's a dead end. The truth? It's the doorway. It's feedback that says you're close, but not quite there. Adjust, listen, align. Because the most effective communicators aren't the ones who speak the loudest. They're the ones that listen the deepest. Here's the second lesson. Calibrate. Read the feedback, not the friction. When I finally stopped labeling Mark as resistant, something subtle but powerful happened. I started listening differently. That's the first step. Calibrate. Calibration means observing what's actually happening in the moment. Tone, words, posture, energy, and treating it all as information. Most of us miss this step because we're too busy preparing our next point, trying to prove, convince, or fix. But in NLP, resistance isn't rejection, it's feedback. Here's what that looks like in practice. When someone crosses their arms or leans back, they're not necessarily closed off. They might just be protecting their space. When a client gets quiet, it doesn't mean they're ignoring you. They might be processing. When a team member challenges your idea, that's not defiance. It's an invitation to clarify or connect differently. Calibrating means staying curious instead of reactive. You become a detective, not a debater. With Mark, I noticed the small cues. His tone grew flat, his answers shorter, his eyes drifted. That wasn't rudeness, it was feedback. His system was saying, you're not meeting me where I am. So instead of pushing harder, I shifted. I mirrored his pace, matched his structure, and changed my questions from how do you feel to what process do you usually follow? Instantly, his energy changed. His eyes came back, the tension dropped. That's the magic of calibration. It tells you when to adjust. So next time someone resists, pause before reacting. Watch, listen, ask yourself, what are they really showing me right now? What's their world like? Because when you treat every reaction as feedback, you'll never miss the real message underneath. Here's the third lesson. Match before you lead. Once I began noticing Mark's cues, his rhythm, his tone, the way his words landed, the next step was to match him before trying to lead him anywhere new. This is one of the most powerful and most misunderstood principles in communication. Most people skip right to trying to change someone's mind. They rush to convince, to fix, to buy in. But if someone doesn't feel understood, they won't follow, no matter how good your logic or how inspiring your vision is. In NLP, we call it pacing and leading. You pace by meeting them where they are, and you lead by guiding them forward. Once connection is established, matching doesn't mean copying, it means aligning. If they speak slowly and carefully, don't speed your sentences through. If they prefer structure, give them steps, not stories. If they focus on data, show evidence before emotion. They're saying through your tone and rhythm, I get how you operate. That's exactly what I did with Mark. I mirrored his pace, matched his calm tone, and spoke his language. Systems, processes, structure. Once he felt that alignment, the tension melted. Only then did he open up to exploring things like motivation, team connection, and fulfillment. That's the sequence. Match first, then lead. When you skip the matching part, you create resistance. When you do it well, you create rapport. People Follow people who feel them, not just people who speak to them. Because before anyone will follow your advice, they need to feel your understanding. Here's the fourth lesson. Flex your style, not your standards. Once you've calibrated and matched, the next level of mastery is flexibility. Because let's be honest, most of us communicate the way we like to receive communication. If we're energetic, we expect energy back. If we're analytical, we expect logic. If we're emotional, we expect connection. But real influence isn't about comfort, it's about adaptability. In NLP, we say the person with the most flexibility in behavior controls the outcome. That doesn't mean controlling others. It means guiding becomes by being able to move fluidly between styles instead of getting stuck in just one. With Mark, that flexibility changed everything. Once I met him in his logical world, I didn't stay there. I gradually guided him toward emotional awareness. I built a bridge between data and feeling, structure and meaning. That's the balance. You flex your style, but you don't compromise your standards. You stay grounded in your intention, the why behind what you're doing, but you change how you express it depending on who's in front of you. For example, with a fast thinker, speed up. With a reflective one, slow down. With a visionary, speak in outcomes. With a detail-oriented person, show the steps. The message stays the same, but the delivery meets them where they are. Because the goal isn't to be right, it's to be received. When you learn to flex your communication like that, you stop forcing connection and start facilitating it. And that's when rapport turns from a technique into trust. When I think back to that session with Mark, I can still picture the room. The soft hum of the air conditioner, the faint sound of his pen tapping against the desk, the polite but distant look in his eyes, the one that said, "I'm here because I have to be." And I remember the silence, the kind that stretches just a little too long, where you start to wonder if you're completely lost. If I kept going that way, I was speaking my language instead of his. That silence would have been the end of the session. He would have closed his notebook, thanked me for my time, and walked out, unchanged. He might have no longer been my client, another conversation that looked fine on the surface, but nothing changed underneath. And isn't that what happens when we miss rapport? We push harder, thinking more effort will break through. But all it really does is build a thicker wall. Now imagine the opposite. What if every bit of resistance, every sigh, every silence, every sideways glance became a signal to listen deeper, not talk louder? That's what I did with Mark. Once I adjusted, slowed my pace, matched his tone, spoke in structure, the energy in the room shifted. His shoulders softened, his eyes came back to life. He began to reflect. He started connecting dots, not just his work, but in his life. Within weeks, his leadership changed. His team started responding. Meetings turned into conversations. The transformation didn't start with a new strategy. It started with connection. Because when you lead with flexibility, you invite trust. When you listen instead of lecture, you open minds. And when you build rapport, real grounded rapport, people stop resisting and start participating. So what if the next time you face resistance, you didn't see it as a wall, but as a mirror reflecting exactly what needs to shift in you? That's where real influence begins, not by changing others, but by changing how you reach them. Resistance isn't the problem, it's the invitation. And when you learn to meet people where they are, you don't just change the conversation, you change the result. If you're ready to keep growing with that kind of alignment, don't stop here. Click on the next video and let's keep building from here.